Hey, it's Zoe, and today is a solo-sode. Woohoo! We're going to be wrapping up the season, giving some insights from that particular season. I'm going to be giving you hot tips for high-performing teams. We're going to go through recommended books. I'm going to do a special book reading from my second book, Moments, and we're going to showcase upcoming events. So lots of news, lots of insight, lots of resources. Let's do it.
Welcome to the Zoe Routh Leadership Podcast, where we share all things people stuff in leadership. Learn from leaders who have done the hard yards and learn from experience. Hear from expert authors about the latest insights from culture to strategy and messy people dynamics. Get tips and insights from multiple award-winning author and leadership expert herself, Zoe Routh. Now, on with the show.
So we're just wrapping up the season of the podcast on high performing teams. That's all about leading performance. And I think the standout sessions for me in this season have been the interview with Susan Davison, who's the CEO of the Australian Diabetes Educators Association. I just love hearing from leaders and what they're doing on the ground in reality. And I know that my listeners absolutely love those particular episodes too. So that's a worthy listen. It came out just before Christmas, so you may have missed it if you were caught up in the hubbub of Christmas time. Really worth listening to. And probably the next one for me was the interview with Keith Renenson from Colorado, a skier, a like-minded skier, and his stories about getting lost in the Himalayas and what it meant in terms of thinking about resilience and tenacity. And his whole acronym of TRIP in terms of what virtues leaders need to develop. And I think that whole concept of values versus virtues has stayed with me, and I want to explore that further in my own leadership thinking. And the third episode probably was the interview with Hedda Bird, fabulous woman from the UK who had so much great energy. I just loved her passion for people and her insights. And her book was pretty good too, like a very practical, useful handbook. So those three episodes, Susan Davidson, Keith Renenson, and Hedda Bird, are the big recommends from this past season. And later on in today's solo-sode, I'm going to give you a couple of my own insights about what I've observed from reading books and listening to leaders and interviewing them in terms of what high-performing teams are really all about. In my personal updates, I'm back running decent distances again without falling over or hurting my back. Yay! And my feet don't hurt. So last year was just, it was a cascade of injuries of my back, of my feet, and I was just whinging about something all the time. So this week I managed to run 16.5K, which was a decent effort, particularly as it was pretty darn hot and hilly. So I'm excited about that, and I'm setting my sights on doing another half marathon with my running club. I think it's in June, so that's something to focus my running, but I'm promising myself not to overdo it. The other personal update is the novel. Yes, I have started the second round of edits / rewriting. So I got it back from the editor. He liked it, which is such a huge relief. And I've started nutting down and adding in the chapters and sections he's recommended and polishing it up a little bit. I am looking for beta readers, so people who will read the novel before it goes through the last spit and polish rounds, to give me feedback on the story, what they think of it, and that kind of thing. So if you're interested in getting an insight and reading the book before it actually comes out in hard copy, so you get a PDF of the current version, so unpolished, to help be part of developing the novel, that would be fabulous. I only need 10 because otherwise it's too much feedback. I've got a couple spots taken already. But if you're interested in being a better reader, email me, zoe@zoerouth.com, and let me know. And when I finish the first round of edits that I'm in now, then the PDF will go out to you. You have about a month to read the book. So hopefully that's enough time. It's quite long at the moment, and I think with the additional edits will be something like 90,000 words, which is 400 or 500 pages, I think. It's a pretty decent sized book. And hopefully it's enjoyable. So that's the personal updates. Okay, upcoming events. Oh my goodness, March has a whole bunch of events that we're offering, and the first one is Difficult Conversations for Leaders. It's an online event, a 3-hour thing, on the 3rd of March. So that's really good for you and your team to come along to that. It will give you all the fundamental skills that you need to have difficult conversations. It's my bread and butter piece of work. I get booked for difficult conversations more than any other training that I do because it's a perennial challenge for people. So that's coming up 3rd of March, online training. And the second one is Elite Executive Teams for Consistent High Performance. So I'm putting to good use everything I've learned about high performance over the last 6 months or so. And that's happening online as well on the 18th of March. And that's a full day workshop. Don't worry, it's highly engaging. So even though it's on Zoom, you won't die of boredom. It'll be pretty exciting. So Elite Executive Teams for Consistent High Performance is on the 18th of March. And lastly, we've got a live event and a online one called it's to showcase amplifiers, and it's all about hybrid team success. So I'm going to be sharing a little bit of the insights that I've been working with the Amplifiers group with. And that is a free event. And that is on the 23rd of March virtually and the 25th of March over lunch here in Canberra. So there you have it. Lots of upcoming events. You can find out more at zoerouth.com. Click on programs, click on events, and they're all listed there. That's where you can register. And if you've got any questions, email me, zoe@zoerouth.com. All right, so now we are heading into my reading life section. This is a new section on the podcast, and I hope you like it because, I think I like it. So there you go. Hopefully it serves you well. And I'm calling it my reading life because I've just discovered that I actually have a reading life. I didn't know there was such a thing. And it was listening to the podcast, What Should I Read Next?, which is obviously all for readers. And she talked about reading life. And she has these questions. She asks her applicants to the show, so people come on the show, what's going on in your reading life? What are you enjoying about it? What do you find frustrating? I'm like, wow, I didn't know reading could be a life all of its own, but it makes sense. I mean, I read a lot of books, so I clearly have a reading life, and then I could organize it. Oh my goodness. Instead of feeling completely overwhelmed by the 50 odd unread books on my Kindle and the other stacks of books all around my office. So I have a strategy to start to dig into and clean up my excessive book reading, or book buying, I should say, rather than reading. And in doing so, I thought I'd share a couple of books that I have read that I loved, and a couple of books that I'm currently reading, and books I'm planning to read. And if you were looking for inspiration for some reading yourself. So what I have read, and they are both fiction books lately. So I've been reading mostly fiction lately, just taking a break from nonfiction. And the first one is My Sister's Keeper by Jodi Picoult. This was good and controversial at the same time. So this book is really challenging ethically. It's the story of a family whose young daughter, I think she's 3 at the time, is diagnosed with a terrible form of leukemia. And one of the ways to treat it is to have matching donors give blood and bone marrow and stuff. But her current sibling, her brother, isn't a match. So guess what? They decide to have another kid, and hopefully it is a match for their second daughter, or for their first daughter, I should say. And the story unfolds from there. So they have a third child. Lo and behold, the third child, daughter, is a match to the ailing daughter, and it's about how they at first just used the umbilical cord to help generate new stem cells to help treat her sister's cancer. And then it goes on from there. So they take more bits and pieces from the second daughter, and it's quite confronting. I love this book. I thought it was really challenging. I thought the ending sucked. I thought Picoult really bailed out of really, I won't tell you no spoilers, but the ending was disappointing, I have to say. It could have been a lot more powerful, I guess, if you forced the hand of the characters. I'll just leave it at that. So My Sister's Keeper, Jodi Picoult, I think, is a fabulous writer. She has a deft hand with her language, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. Now, the other book, which I listened to on audiobook form, was a classic, Anna Karenina by Leo Tolstoy. If you haven't read it or listened to it, it was remarkable. Oh my God. The language, it was just stunning. The story's fairly benign. It's about a woman who has an affair and what happens and the fallout around her. Tragic and heart-rending and all that, but just the way Tolstoy captures each precious moment between people, observations of landscape, outstanding. So one of the things I'm intending to do this year is read War and Peace, big epic tome. I'm going to read it in hardcover form, not hardcover, but hard copy form, which I don't usually do. Usually I do all my reading electronically. So I thought this one deserves the full treatment, the full real book treatment. So I'm looking forward to reading War and Peace at some stage this year after I get through the other said 50 books that are on waiting, blinking away in my Kindle. Nonfiction book I can recommend, Donna McGeorge's latest book, The One Day Refund. This is the third book in the series all about time. So Donna is an expert in making work, a productivity expert. And her first two books I thought were really great, The 25-Minute Meeting and The First 2 Hours. So if you're looking for some productivity recommendations, Donna McGeorge's The One Day Refund and her other books in the series too, which are really great. So coming up in my reading life, I'm going to be reading some books on power because I intend to write my own book on power this year. Books on thinking and books on masculinity. So nice bit of diverse nonfiction reading. And I'm currently reading Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel, which is a near future science fiction, near future dystopian novel, I guess. That's right. Near futures dystopian fantasy. Maybe that's the way to describe it. But anyway, the world ends through a pandemic. It was written before our current pandemic, so it's kind of timely to read it. And I'm about 65% engaged and about 75% of the way through it. I was expecting more by all the rave reviews in terms of the language and description, so it hasn't quite fulfilled what I was hoping for from the book that way. But still, a nice, interesting, curious read, and it ties all the different characters together well. And the other book I'm reading or listening to on Audible is Day of the Triffids, another classic by John Wyndham. It's a bit intense reading two dystopian, end of the world type of books, end of civilization type of books, I should say. And Day of the Triffids is a classic. I remember reading it in high school and finding it quite amazing. You know, the part of the book is these plants that I guess they're alien plants. They grow and they develop legs and they can kill you. So yeah, good times. So that's what's happening in my reading life. Okay, I've got some hot tips for you. Hot tips on high-performing teams based on the interviews, research, and reading I've done over the last several months. And the first one, I have to say, is a little deflating because I've discovered that high-performing teams are a myth. Yeah, I know, right? Not that inspiring. When it comes to high-performing teams, I really believe it's an aspirational ideal that we have. Can teams actually consistently perform and meet and exceed their goals? Well, I think aspirationally they can. So I think we set our sights in becoming high-performing teams. And I think teams have moments of feeling like high performers where everyone's got their back, they're exhilarated, they're focused, they're kicking goals. But you know what? Even the Navy SEALs, which are always my epitome for high-performing teams, have petty rivalries. Even the All Blacks with their no dickhead rule have to deal with dickhead behavior. And even Atlassian, which is a paragon of culture and amazingness all around, I am sure, they don't have direct evidence of this, but I'm projecting, I am sure they also deal with tension on teams. So I don't think we can actually reach the nirvana of being in a high-performing team consistently. I think there's moments that happen with that. And the other thing I've discovered with it is that high-performing teams, it's an aspirational model that we should definitely strive towards. It takes work. It takes work to work on a high-performing team. And it's not just work on it once and you're done. It needs constant focus. The other thing with high-performing teams is that they're always in flux. We can't always stay at the peak of performance. It's like an athlete. You can't just hard charge all the time. You need to recuperate. And there is a cycle of culture. There's a cycle of process and of energy in culture, in teams, and across organizations. I think I've talked about this previously last year in a webinar series, and I've put it in my lead culture module for amplifiers, where you go from fallow, which is the rest, recover, recuperate, reflect phase. Then you can go into the productive phase where you're actually, all guns firing, all guns blazing, all cylinders firing. That's what I want to say. And people are working actively on the projects. And then you have this flourishing phase where you're reaping the rewards of all that effort, and things are, you're knocking over all your goals and results, and things are going well. And then you come back to the fallow phase. The danger is sometimes if we don't do each of those phases well, we can fall into the putrid phase, which isn't so great. And the putrid phase is when things start to fall apart. The culture starts to deteriorate. So with high-performing teams, we're always in flux, and we need to monitor and measure what's going on at all times. The third point around high-performing teams is that leadership matters. Leadership matters. High-performing teams don't just happen on their own. Sometimes you have a nice blend of personalities and it feels good, but leadership needs to give the team direction. It needs to give it feedback. It needs to give it containers and constraints in order to sharpen the team's activities and the team's capacities. So it really does need guidance. It doesn't necessarily need authority to do that. It does need stewardship. And that's where really strong leadership is useful. And it can come from anyone in the team, but somebody needs to do it. The fourth point is that the leader matters. So this is the person who may have designated authority, may not have. However, if the person who is acting as leader, which is taking a coordinating role or a motivating role or a stewardship role, then how they show up really does have an impact. Their energy, their focus, their attitude has a huge ripple effect. And it seems unfair, really, that the leader should have such a magnitude of impact, like an exponential one, compared to the diligent workers on the team. And yet they do. We're hardwired to pay attention to the leaders, and how we show up does get noticed and people modulate their own attitude in accordance to what's going on with the leader. So as leaders, we need to be really mindful of that, of how we are showing up. And taking care of ourselves is always a primary responsibility. We can't just neglect that. Especially now, like edging our way into the third year of the pandemic, it's tiresome. It's so tiresome. And we need to be looking after ourselves even more because of this, because the mental health burden on us and the people around us is incredible. So it matters more than ever to do that. And my last hot tip for high-performing teams is basically to have a perfect garden. Here we go, introducing a new metaphor. To have a perfect garden, to have a perfect high-performing team, it needs to be weeded. You need to look after those things that are growing in the garden that you don't want to be there. And I'm looking around at my own garden, which is pretty much a jungle. It's supposed to be a low-maintenance garden. And like high-performing teams, low maintenance doesn't mean no maintenance. Ultimately, the forces in a team are powerful, like nature. And as leaders, we can guide that powerful force. We can steer it in different directions, train things to grow in a different way. But ultimately, we cannot tame it itself. Nature has its own powerful force, and so do the team members on our team. We can provide the direction, we can provide the constraints, and ultimately it's up to the individuals to rise to the occasion or not. So there you have it. Those are my hot tips for high-performing teams. So for something special, I thought I'd do a short reading from my second book, Moments, Leadership When It Matters Most. Why Moments? Because I think it is my most underappreciated book. And I think underappreciated by me in particular, and certainly missed by others. So I thought I'd do a brief reading from the foreword and a little bit of part one around context to give you a taster of this book. I have 20 copies left, hard copies left in my library, just ready for people to snap up and purchase. And those are the last ones I will have printed that I will sign personally. You can otherwise get printed versions if you want through any of the other booksellers. But these are the last ones that I have on my shelf that I would be able to sign for you and sign for you personally and mail out. And you can order that through my website at zoerouth.com and click on books and you'll find Moments there. Okay, onward. Forward. This is what frustrates me. When I see good people, smart people, shy away from speaking their mind. When I see a leader not stepping into the life they truly want out of obligation. When professionals shoot off an email to vent their spleen. When leaders cut others down to size. When executives use email to express concerns or lecture others. When leaders tell me about how they feel stuck in their life out of duty. When people gossip and shoot down their peers out of petty jealousy, and when I catch myself doing that too. Here's the thing. Your life is made up of moments. The quality of your life depends on the quality of these moments. And the quality of these moments is completely dependent on how you show up, how you connect, and how you act in each precious moment. If you are like many leaders I work with, at first, it's likely you don't take that kind of care in the moment. It's likely you don't show up with that kind of focus yet. If so, you are burning relationships. You are frittering away your life in petty worries. You're getting passed over because you don't step up and stand out. Because you don't speak your mind. Because you play small instead of living large. Because you are afraid to rock the boat. Because you are afraid of being seen, really seen. And who misses out? You do. Your family does. Your colleagues do. Your business does. Ooh, kicking some butt here. Every time you shrink instead of expand, you rob the people you care about. Your silence steals ideas and opportunity from your work and hides them away. The world needs each voice and each brilliant light to shine. Every time you hide, you hold the evolution of human consciousness back. Moments is your handbook to help you speak more clearly, to be seen more strongly, and to be courageous when fear rattles the cage of your heart. I want you to be fierce in your heart, gentle in your presence, and sound in your conviction. I invite you to lead your life, not just live it. We can do that, one moment at a time. Zoe Routh, Canberra, 2016. Can you believe it's been 6 years already? Oh my goodness. Okay, so this is now part one, leadership context. Just a short excerpt here. Leadership is a deeply personal expression. Formed by cultural pressures and immediate contextual forces, we also must consider the historical and global trends that drive an even bigger picture of leadership. When we become aware of all these forces, we begin to manage how we lead. Voice, our ability to express what we really feel and think, is the lifeblood of leading a fulfilling life. If we are not fully self-expressed, we are like a plant growing in shadows, reaching for the light, a little bent and crippled. When we find our voice, we learn how to speak up, to speak out, and speak with others. We get seen, heard, and valued. No matter how terrifying or dangerous we may find them, we feel stronger as we give voice to our innermost thoughts. Hiding our thoughts is hiding a part of ourselves, and ultimately we know we are living a lie. Being able to speak our truth is liberating. To own the fullness of who we are is like being able to dance naked in full sunlight with absolutely no fear. It's not quite the feeling of reckless abandon, but of considered freedom. The people around us are so thirsty for us to speak the truth. When we hear someone speak up for themselves and own their perspective in a gracious manner, we are in turn illuminated and given permission or invited to be honest, to be genuine, to be authentic. We crave it. Over years of socialization, we have learned to hide away our inner thoughts because they offend or they frighten or they don't fit the status quo. We've invented a whole range of reasons for staying quiet and shutting down. So what gets in our way of speaking up? I have a Google alert for speaking up. At least twice a day, I read pieces from people who write of the obstacles, consequences, and the outcomes of speaking up. This is usually against an injustice. From afar, we give a nod to those who put themselves in the crossfire for a higher cause. We deem them noble and brave. And we like to think we would do the same. But would we? Here are 4 types of people who don't speak up. The pleaser. The pleaser's excuses are masked by their good intentions. They want to make a positive contribution and hesitate unless they are sure their voice will be welcome. Their real issue is lack of confidence. The wounded. The wounded's catch cry is, they're an asshole. It is the get out of jail free excuse for not confronting a nemesis. The wounded dismisses the object of their derision as unworthy of any effort because they are simply less of a person than we are, due to their aberrant behavior. The wounded's reluctant to deal with assholes robs them of the opportunity to develop capacity for compassion and empathy. With a narrow view, the wounded disables their ability to be influential and make good decisions. The rationalist. The rationalist is crippled by there's too much at stake. They feel there are genuine risks in speaking up and out. The rationalist feels they may ruffle feathers or tilt the scales. There may be outright rebuffs, dressing down, alienation, ostracism, even sabotage. They feel they may lose their job, reputation, or relationships. The problem here is that the rationalist may fail to act on their moral compass. They put self-preservation above doing the right thing. The apathetic. The apathetic's cry, I'm too tired to care, is insidious. They are so worn out by the pace of their actual and digital lives, they do not have the capacity to follow through important leadership commitments. The apathetic's willpower battery is drained dry from decision fatigue, from the millions of tiny decisions we need to make. What surprise, then, that the apathetic's lifestyle and work style leave little room for bigger leadership choices. Speak up? Who can be bothered? By not speaking up, the pleaser, the wounded, the rationalist, and the apathetic, in all of us, lose our integrity. These are high-stakes games. Learning to speak up, out, and with others takes particular skill and is something we will unpack in moments. Okay, so that's it. That's the call out. If you find yourself not stepping up and speaking out, then this is the book for you. You can grab it at zoerouth.com on my website or any of the other booksellers that you prefer. So a little bit of I hope you enjoyed that, by the way. If you'd like to hear more book readings from any of my books, and maybe even from my novel when that gets a little bit more polished, let me know. That would be really cool. So preview of our next season. Our theme for this quarter coming up is lead culture, hybrid team success, something that is very topical and useful for everybody who is doing the dance between working from home and coming into the office and managing teams that are dispersed and trying to get the whole team to galvanize and create a culture. So that's what we're looking at this quarter. And as a preview, the topics that we've got from different people that we're interviewing are advanced emotional intelligence, verbal identity, which is all about branding the use of language around our team, distributed teams, so somebody who has done this extremely well in building their business and what we can learn from them. Productivity, so we've got an interview with the famous Donna McGeorge, who is just fantastic. We've got a really interesting, powerful interview with a man who is a victim of sexual assault and his work around developing safe cultures, and we talk about masculinity in the workplace. So just some of the preview of the interviews coming up. It's going to be an amazing season. As always, if you like the show, please give it a rating on wherever you are. Give it a little review. That would be awesome. Good karma points for you, and awesome thank you to me, which would be great. What else? Oh, yes. The podcast is brought to you by Amplifiers, my advanced Boy, I can't even get my spiel right. Here we go. Let me try that again. The podcast is brought to you by Amplifiers, my advanced leadership training program for CEOs, managing directors, and senior executives from a whole bunch of different sectors. And we focus on developing the 4 key skills of advanced leadership: lead change, lead culture, lead strategy, and lead performance. We do that in the company of like-minded, awesome folks who are there to challenge each other, to support each other, and to inspire one another. If that feels like that's something for you, where you want to be stretched this year, join us. We've got a local group here in Canberra as well as a virtual group. We'd love to have you on board. Just check us out on my website at zoerouth.com. Click on Programs and Amplifiers. In the meantime, thanks for listening. I really appreciate you. It's awesome to be in your ears yet again this week. And in the meantime, live well, lead well.
You've been listening to the Zoe Routh Leadership Podcast with leadership expert Zoe Routh. For more about people stuff and to contact Zoe, go to zoerouth.com.